I don't know whether we'll be allowed to continue remote work. I think that it was allowed during this period because it was a worldwide crisis and an emergency that no one, had very little time to prepare for. But I can't imagine studios allowing our editors to be working on Avatar 2 and 3 from their home. The next Jurassic World movie from their home. There's different levels of security. Our building is so secure, and we are constantly going through and dealing with the studio's security agents to ensure that we are just as locked down as we possibly can be.
One of the things that I'm curious about, talking about innovations changing overnight and being forced to, a question that I get all the time that I've talked about, maybe not as an informed expert, but as a curious onlooker that dabbles in tests, is this idea of remote work. I'm guessing that over the last year, you've had to transition to a completely remote workforce, yes?
Absolutely, with one exception, our finishing department. The group that does the final color, the mixes, that equipment is just simply too expensive still to be operated on at home. And also they're dealing with the raw files, which makes it next to impossible to work remotely on. So, we very safe protocols because our office footprint is about a little under 40,000 square feet. So if you had only 8 people going in there, all of which have their own separate rooms or bays, we were able to operate completely safely through the pandemic for our finishing group. Everyone else in the company, though, was worked remotely. It's been a really great experience, but I think that there's 2 things that are missing. Number one, you can only learn so much on Zoom. Something our editors are telling us all the time, that they miss the thing that if they're cutting something, they can walk out of their bay, walk into another bay with another editor and sit there and say, hey, can you come over here and take a look at this cut? I'm a little stuck here. Do you got any ideas? You can't do that over Zoom. It's kind of like, and then there's something also about brainstorming that, you do it on Zoom. Again, there's a different energy when you're in person and you're throwing about ideas like that. People are talking about virtual writers' rooms. And I'm like, I'm sure that's great to get us through this thing, but I'm sure they would be much more productive and probably more creative if they were in a room together again. So I think that the creative process is actually suffering somewhat because of this, because of the remote working. And that's where I'm really hoping that we come back. The other aspect of it is I don't know whether we'll be allowed to continue remote work. I think that it was allowed during this period because it was a worldwide crisis and an emergency that no one, had very little time to prepare for. But I can't imagine studios allowing our editors to be working on Avatar 2 and 3 from their home. The next Jurassic World movie from their home. There's different levels of security. Our building is so secure, and we are constantly going through and dealing with the studio's security agents to ensure that we are just as locked down as we possibly can be. That's impossible to do it. That's possible to do it in like 35 square feet of footage. Square footage in an office space. But how do you do that at 80 different locations around Los Angeles, or apartments or homes? That's next to impossible. And it would also be cost prohibitive, I would imagine, to put all those security things in someone's home like that.
Which I think probably answers my next question, that I know a lot of other editors and creatives that would be looking to work for a company like Mobscene either now or in the future. I personally believe that the most conducive to both the creative process, but also to some semblance of work-life balance, is the hybrid model.
Mhm.
And as you know, you and I were experimenting with that back in 2006, because that was basically one of my stipulations, is that I really want to help you guys with whatever the next featurette is. But I was also dealing with other projects and clients. And I said, do you mind if I just, take a drive and work from home? And back then the security stakes were much lower and they were smaller projects. But we were kind of experimenting with that. And I've always believed that I don't think that just remote works. Even for me, you don't get any more introverted than me. When the pandemic hit and everybody started saying quarantine, I'm like, I call it Monday. Like, this is what every day is like for me. I'm always working from home, doing my own thing. But I know that it's best for the creative process to be in the room with people and bounce back and forth ideas. But I also think this antiquated idea of you must be in the office from 9 a.m. until 7 p.m., no matter if you have work to do or not, that just burns people out. So I've always thought the hybrid model is probably the best one to go back to. But from your perspective, as somebody dealing with the biggest movies on the planet, security is a concern. But let's assume for a moment that security wasn't as much of a concern. What do you think is really the best model, both for creative process, but also just for health, well-being, and sanity, to make sure you're not burning your talent out?
Well, I agree with you. In a perfect world coming out of this pandemic, I would love to see a hybrid model be able to be instituted. There are different levels of of project security. Everything that comes into the company, we're very, very incredibly careful with. But there are some things that can be done under less, protection. And I'm not necessarily talking about like a television show or a feature film. We also do a lot of other different types of projects that are not under nearly as much security. Those could still be done at home. And I think that if we, if pending the client's restrictions or want a level of security that they want, we might be able to work on some things remotely. And I think that it would be very healthy for everyone if they were able to do both. Not unlike the initial idea with Mob Scene was 1 week you could be cutting a trailer and the following 3 weeks you could be cutting an HBO First Look to just change things up and keep you fresh and keep you on your, engaged. But I think that, being able to offer that would be really nice. I just don't know whether it's going to be our call. I think we're going to have to see what the clients are going to want, and we're going to obviously adhere to what the clients ask for.